Here at KSMO, it's now time for our spotlight on the Salem Memorial District Hospital. Tiffin Felkerson has made her way in. Tiffin, good to see you. I haven't seen you since, I guess, a park board meeting.
I believe so.
It's the last
Yeah.
time I'd seen you. And I know you're busy because you are the community champion of the grant from the Delta Regional Authority.
Yes, I
See,
am.
so would you kind of lay a little background on obviously what the community champion is and what that grant is all about?
Sure. So yes, back in it was 2021. The hospital was awarded or brought in as part of one of the cohorts. So the Delta Regional Authority, they have it's several different government groups that are create a program. And so every year they create a cohort of rural hospitals within the Delta region, and Salem is part of that Delta region.
We're
And
kind of on the
we're on
very
the very
edge.
cusp. Yes, we are. We are kind of on that cusp, but it's great that we are within that region to be able to participate within this program.
And let me explain, Delta Regional Authority starts in Missouri and goes to Mississippi.
Yes, that's
all the
correct.
way down to the Gulf. So this is
Yes.
a huge area.
It is a
right?
huge area, yes. And so
You may continue.
Yeah, no, that's
I don't
great.
want, people may not know the Delta
No.
Regional Authority is that big.
It is that big, and so it's great because you're part of a cohort, which there's other Missouri rural hospitals that are participating within our cohort, but there's also hospitals within Louisiana, and there's about, I believe, 12 hospitals total within our 2021 cohort. And really what it is, it has two different parts of the grant. One part is within the hospital, and they really have three different areas that they work with the hospital to help improve specific areas within the hospital. And then the second area is the community champion role, which is the role that I took on in September. And that role is to work within the community and work with what we call community partners. And what we do is we try to help facilitate bringing together community partners, and those partners are those in the community who are already doing great works within their communities, such as food banks or mission work or your faith-based groups, to your civil departments, your police, fire department, your school districts and so forth, who work within the community in various aspects, and bring them together to say, okay, what are some of those areas within a rural community, Salem, that need to have resources that we don't have, or maybe we need to strengthen those resources to improve our health outcomes or to make our community healthier.
Sounds like a strategic play to try and get everybody to work together to move forward. And that is kind of what it all falls back on your shoulders to put together, obviously, a plan strategically that's going to allow it to expand and grow and into the future, correct?
That's correct. So we
So
did
no
have-
pressure on you
yeah,
at all.
no pressure. No, not at all. Not at all. No. And luckily, I enjoy facilitating. I love doing a lot of project management. So this fits kind of right into what I love to do, and this is something I'm very passionate about. I come from a rural community in Kansas, so I'm not originally from Salem. But this is something I feel very passionate about. Just I believe that there are certain things that everyone should have access to, and whether that's healthcare, food, from our children to our elderly. And so I believe that especially too when you are isolated sometimes, or you feel like maybe we don't have the resources. Well, we may be small, but we can be mighty. And I've said
Sure.
that since the day when I stepped into Salem and at the hospital. Sometimes there's this idea of we're so small, we don't have this, we don't have that. And it's like, well, we may be small, but we can still be mighty. And we can grow and we can develop and create and be creative.
Sure.
And that's what I'd love to do, is try to be creative. What can we use our resources? Because to me, growing up on a farm, you take what you have and you make the best of it.
That's right, you use it.
And you use it, and you try to, grow and just move forward. And you never know how successful you can be. So.
It sounds like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to, obviously you've had one meeting to get kind of this started. You have another meeting scheduled. I know we just kind of talked before we came on, that may have to get shifted a little bit. But you're looking for maybe some undiscovered resources that we already have in our community to bring into this grant, because not everybody knows what everybody does out there. And
Correct.
there are a lot of
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
talents that maybe, obviously, you may not be aware of as of right now. And this isn't going to happen overnight. This is going
Right.
to take a little while. But these other undiscovered talents that can be of assistance to other people coming in and making it a better community. And I think that is some of the hardest things to identify because I think a lot of people feel like, "Oh, there's nothing I can do to help contribute." And you're absolutely wrong.
Absolutely. That's spot on, Stan. Because I think that a lot of people feel like, well, we've been doing it this way, or, I don't know how I can help. And I think you're right. We had our first meeting, and then from that, we did a community health questionnaire. Some people may have seen the posting on the Salem Memorial District Hospital Facebook page, and hopefully you contributed to that. And that's what our next meeting is going to be, is we're going to look at what the community said. We're also going to look at the questionnaire health needs assessment that the hospital did last year as well.
Right.
And
That's
kinda look at 'em,
required,
yeah,
by
which
the
is
way.
required.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Ours was just as part of our grant that we do, because it has different questions than the health needs assessment. And so we're really looking at some of those other resources that the assessment needs assessment doesn't look at, which really kind of gets in what they call the social determinants of health. It's where you work, it's where you buy your groceries, it's down to your transportation, housing, all of those other little things, where you play, where you exercise, all of those things that affect you, your daily in and out, that impacts your health, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we will be looking at those results. And then this group, which is not Salem Memorial District Hospital, it's not us who makes this decision.
No, no.
So I want to make that very clear. I'm just merely facilitating.
You're the facilitator. I've got it.
And yes, and so the community partners, or the community will be that's been invited to this meeting, which are a lot of those who are already involved and vested in these groups. They'll be the ones sitting and talking and looking at these and saying, wow, these are kind of the three. And of course, with, you look at the results, they're kind of two or three that kind of float to the top already. And then they'll create work groups. And from that work group, they will determine kind of what are already our strengths within the community? What's missing, And we might have to do some additional surveys. We might have to do some, old boots in the trenches, get out, walk the community, ask people, asking within their churches or wherever, and just kind of saying, hey, why are we missing this? Or what, we have this, but why do you think people are still saying this isn't done? And so from that, the whole big picture is this community care plan, is what we call it, within the grant. And the idea is it's a long-term strategy plan you can think of what are those two or three kind of top key areas. We kind of work on those first. And so let's say, just for conversation, it's transportation. So we know we have some transportation in town, but it's somewhat limited. So how do we develop what we have and we grow it, to make it so it's more for additional transportation or housing or food sources, So what do we take what we have and we grow it and we make it so it's more useful or more available for others? So
one of the things, because of the size of the Salem Memorial District Hospital district, is you're going to get a lot of different input from a lot of different people who are part of this district. You go down in Reynolds County, you go into Crawford County, you go in Texas County, even in the Shannon County, and I don't think people realize just how large this district is served. Now, we also know that with the closing of the Ellington Hospital over there, that we actually have got our district ends, but we're serving an area actually beyond our district because there is nothing else out there.
Correct.
Yeah, if it's
Yes.
either Salem or Farmington or Poplar Bluff. Now, you're nowhere near any of those in that area. You're kind of in that, I kind of call it the black hole of health, because you don't have anything in the immediate area that somebody can, if you got a heart attack, you're going to be in trouble, because there's just nobody there. Now, you do have a couple health centers that can help out and maybe stabilize you, but you're still a long ambulance ride from any hospital that can actually get the right treatment to you or get you to, a physician that knows what you're doing. You may have a healthcare, or maybe it might even be a nurse practitioner. Take nothing away from nurse practitioner, but if you've got some major problems, you definitely need to get transported somewhere. They have to make that quick assessment. They may not be making the total assessment that needs to be made by a doctor. And so what I'm saying is that how important it is to get the district-wide plan, because it's not just Salem plan.
That's right.
It's district-wide. You're serving Bunker. You're serving Montauk. You're going down to Echo Bluff. You're going north. You're going out to Sligo. You got a lot of different people that are involved, different lifestyles, different backgrounds that all have to come together. That's pretty simple for you to put a little plan together for that, Tiffin. That should take you about another 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And so actually, what we're trying to look at from the hospital's perspective, not just with this grant, but it kind of is kind of rolling together, and which is really fantastic. Is that we have this Delta program, which is really great, and sometimes it's like, oh, this is so much more to add on to everything else we have going in the hospital. But at the same time, it's like you have to start somewhere, and you just got to keep.
Sure.
Everyone has to improve. You have your day-to-day life, and then if you don't work out, or you're not doing these other things, you got to keep just trying to do little things here and there to improve, because all of a sudden then you have a huge thing you have to improve, right? So I'm the optimist. I'm always trying to. I'm always the one trying to say, okay, how do we just got to kind of keep moving. I wish I could do that in my personal life all the time, but at least in work life, I'm always doing that. But so what's great is there's also a lot of other grants that are coming out, both within the state, also federally, who are also seeing the importance of all of this, that are ones that we can apply for as well, or other organizations within the community are doing too, who are also looking beyond just our kind of Salem-Dent County borders, which is great, who we are working with. So I think, again, we have to start looking at more of a larger approach to the healthcare within our district as the hospital, which we always have done.
Sure.
But I think it's now really taking it, the big hospitals in the big cities have been doing this forever. But it's been harder in the rural communities to kind of transfer that. And that's what these grants are trying to do, is saying, okay, COVID was hard. A lot of different economic changes have happened, and it's really made a huge impact in the rural communities. And people forget about rural communities. They truly do. And rural health has been one of just my passions. Even when I lived in worked for larger hospitals and so forth in metropolitan areas, my passion in my heart was still rural hospitals, because I had my daughter in a small rural hospital in upstate New York and really got to see how they worked. And right from that was, wow,
That's a learning experience.
This is totally different. And to me, people forget about us. And I think that now, after COVID and seeing how much of impact, that we had big cities calling us to say, hey, do you have any beds? That they need us, and vice versa. So I think that now we're getting more assistance in different ways, and that is much needed to make our population healthier, make our residents healthier, and that it's about coming together. Where I think you felt very isolated, because we are geographically, we're isolated,
Right.
but we're serving a much larger population, but it's just dispersed. It can be 100 miles away.
Sure.
So how do we manage that? So, mobile units and all these different ways of getting to that population, because they may not have, gas is expensive, things have gone up, but we still need to provide them that health care to make sure that that they're getting their medications and so forth. But we need to band together, and I think that it's just a different approach than maybe it has been in the past.
And I maybe people don't understand when we start talking about the board of directors of the Salem Hospital. They each have a district that they serve. And when they originally set up, the populations were all pretty close. That's why some are huge and some are somewhat smaller, that have a little bit more, I would say, city of Salem influence on them, because obviously that's where most of the population is. But it's very important for those districts to all be served. And I think just what you're saying here, all that input that you get from the people, boss, bunker, all those different things, it's all very important. But in the overall plan, it has to work for everybody. Now, it's never going to work for everybody.
Right.
We all know that. But your optimistic idea is that it will. But here's the one thing that I know that's the hardest thing, and we always know, that nothing stays static. What you do today to reach Okay, we have a plan for today. It's great. It's fantastic. 2 years down the road, that has got to adapt. It's got to change
Exactly.
with what's going on. We all know, and you know as well as I do, we have a lot of people who retire to our area. They come down here, and here's the situation with a lot of those people. They leave maybe a major metropolitan area, let's say St. Louis or Kansas City or Columbia. Hospitals, they're not that far away, 5, 10, 15 minutes max. And you have ambulances on good paved roads that can get there great. Well, they want to get away from all that. They want to retire. Maybe they were raised on a farm, and they want to go back to that. And that's great. Well, they go out there and they buy the back 40 over here, and they build their little gravel road down there. It's a lot different to try and get an ambulance down a gravel road, and you know how icy and stuff it was right now. Imagine trying to get an ambulance down there to try and get to somebody if they should get ill or fall or get injured or have a heart attack. These are things I think when people move to the rural areas, they start to forget about this stuff. Well, I'm going to get away from the pollution. I'm going to get away from the noise. I'm going to get away from the crime. You're also getting away from medical services to a point. And that's why Salem Memorial District Hospital, Salem Memorial Hospital now, they're trying to change the name. It's still officially district, because it is a district, is so important. Because when people say, well, you want to get away from it, if you don't have this hospital and the services that you're expanding on now to make it more community involved, people could be in a big way, hurting wise, not only for future growth, future services, future grants even. Why would people come here? Yeah, and it won't happen.
Right. I mean, I've always said, everyone's going to have their opinion no matter whether you live in a big city or a small town. Everyone has their different opinions of different healthcare systems or hospitals or clinics or particular provider. That's no different no matter where you live. So I think that here we have to just remember that we are in a rural situation, and we should be. There's a lot of places in rural communities that have nothing.
Right.
They've shut down a lot of hospitals over the last 2 years in Texas. Think of how huge Texas is. There's parts of Texas that have no rural hospitals.
That's right.
Now, and they have to go hundreds of miles now to find any type of critical care, if even a clinic. So we should be. I'm not saying anybody has to be thankful, but I'm very thankful just for myself and my own family that if something came up, we have somewhere that they can go to at least have that critical access, which is what we are. We are a critical access hospital. And to be able to have that moment of knowing that we have the resources here to get them then, if they need to, where they need to be, to a larger institution. If they don't, we have the resources here to patch them up or take care of them, give them the medication they need, or have that, provider that they can maybe establish a relationship with for a period of time, who can then get them to a specialist.
Sure. Stabilize them.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at our STEMI protocol and how good we are. I think we were number one in the state as far as quickness.
Yeah.
And getting somebody assessed and into air evac or in an ambulance to get to the destination they need to go to. Number one. Now, when you think of a small rural hospital who has, we'll just say, a smaller staff, but they're very concerned staff. People say, well, people come and go at the hospital all the time. Well, yeah, there are some employees that come and go. There are some employees that have been there for years. These people take pride in what they do. And when you start becoming number one, number two in the entire state when it comes to stroke protocol, STEMI access, getting these things done, putting it into play, I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. And Tiffin, this is. I would love for somebody to be able to video this, what actually happens when they do their practice.
Oh, sure.
Because I don't think anybody has any idea everything that has to happen at one time.
Absolutely.
Seamlessly to make this happen so you can save somebody's life. It is incredible to see. I had a chance to see it back when Jason Mayberry was here, and I thought, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a controlled and it's perfectly executed crazy. Okay, so what I'm saying is it's all strategized. It's all put out. That's exactly what you're trying to do, not in an emergency department for a STEMI or a stroke protocol. You're trying to do this for a community and do the same thing. bring it all. It may look crazy. It may look just absolutely insane, but when you put it all together, the output is there. And this is what we need.
Yeah, and really the overall, going back to this, community champion role, and really what it's really focused on is we're just trying to provide to make sure that, because, you're stronger in numbers, right? If you come together, you can be stronger in numbers. And really what it is to, leverage each other's strengths, look at what our weaknesses are as a community. How can we build on those strengths, and how can we improve some of those areas that we need to work on? And really, it's to improve the overall health. We still have a lot of kids. We talk about, a lot of people say, oh, this is becoming a retirement community. Well, I have young children here in the community myself, and we still have a lot of, young our teachers and some of our younger community and our children who we want to make sure they're healthy. And so it starts not just from our aging population, but it's also to make sure our children are healthy as well. And do they have the resources they need? And so this spans all generations here in Salem and all of the counties. So we did invite like the Ellington School District, Bunker. So there's other school districts that have been invited to come to this to look at it from their perspective.
Sure.
And again, we're working with other communities to see, how can we provide health care and other resources within your community too. So again, it's sometimes I'm trying to kind of keep a grasp of all of these things, and everyone's kind of working, and I think it's kind of like herding cats sometimes. It's, and it's great that everyone has their goals and what they're working on, but sometimes trying to keep it all, and it's not to control by any means. It's just to have an idea of what's going on so that we can leverage everybody's strengths and what they're working on, and make sure that we're, and it's also to educate and to have, and to communicate to others so that we can promote what they're doing as well.
Well, we know nothing, as we mentioned before, nothing stays stagnant. And there's new education, there's new technology coming out, new medical services. And when you look at the Salem Hospital and all the improvements that they have made over the last 5 years with new equipment and things of that nature, still adding to that even as we speak, when you look at what they have done to stay a major integral part of this community, and then if you can add the people and the community leaders into getting together a plan, a community plan. We're not just talking about a plan for our hospital. We're talking about a community plan that can service the community the best, keep them healthy, give them the education they need, give them the opportunity to stay and work here, and then also give them the opportunity to advance by staying and working here. It all sounds wonderful. It's it's pie in the sky. It'll never happen. Well, if you approach it that way, it will never happen, because if you can't get people, as the Wright brothers once said, if you can't buy into the dream, what are you buying into? You have to look at what has not yet been done, and then try and achieve that. If you achieve those goals, you set a new plateau. Every time we set something better, we always do something better, right? I mean, if we go back to the medicines in the 1900s, compare what it is today, holy cow, if we'd have just sat pat on what we do, like, well, we're good enough. No, you're never good enough.
Right.
So you always want to get, and then people have great ideas. That's really what a lot of this is about. You may have somebody that maybe in Boston, Missouri, that has a fantastic idea, but they just don't know. Oh, I don't know what to do with this, and I don't know if it'll work. And, hey, what's the harm in coming to one of these meetings and finding out about it, or expressing it to a community leader and say, if you're ever there, why don't you bring something up about this? Because they may not feel very comfortable doing it. Okay, I have no problem doing that. I'm known to shoot my mouth off a few times. But the idea is that if nobody ever says it, it never gets done. It's never addressed.
And that's a great point. There was one of the success stories they talked about within this grant was one of the other hospitals and one of the other cohorts a couple years ago down in a little tiny town in western Kansas. And it was a great inspirational story. New CEO at the hospital, little tiny town, and somehow he needed a ride or something, and it was going to be a long trip. So he became friends with one of the dishwasher's busboys at the little cafe. And and he said, "Hey, would you help me drive? I've got to drive back quite a ways to get some stuff from our old house and so forth." I may not be telling the story exact right, but the idea is that this young man helped him drive, and during that time, he was just talking about this boy grew up there, his whole family was from there. Well, come to find out, it was either his mother or grandmother died of, I think it was his mother died of breast cancer. Well, they didn't have the resources there at the hospital. She'd gotten her mammogram sooner and so forth. Well, he goes, "Well, what would you do?" And the young man's like, "Well, I don't know why we could have done some sort of fundraiser." This young man ended up doing like a powder puff football game. In the end, they had the K-State, KU cheerleaders there. They ended up having, they had all these colleges and the whole state of Kansas, Colorado, because they were next to Colorado, they joined in, and they ended up raising not just money for a new mammogram, but for a whole mammogram system and all of these things, and it was going to last for a long time. And this just came from, the idea is that it came from a busboy.
Conversation.
From a busboy within the community who had a tragic loss in his life, and said, "This is what I do. I do some sort of fun thing." And he's like, "Well, if I help you get going," and then one person knew another person, another person knew another person. They just started inviting people that they knew, and it ended up, well, K-State wasn't going to be outdone by KU, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And next thing you know, within that community, and so it just grew from there. And so, or like another cohort was just saying that's going on right now, they are now building a whole apartment complex and within their community that has some assisted living. Some of it's also for HUD, some's for, and then also another building is going to be for lower income housing and so forth. And they were able to get grants. They had some people came in with some works of kind and so forth. But this is what they decided to do as a community, and it helped to resolve a lot of their housing issue. So I was like, wow. I mean, and they just did this over 4 years, and within their 4 years of their grant. So again, they may be small, but they can be mighty. And so it just showed how things can, once you get people together in one room and really start working together, you can make so much more progress sometimes than trying to do it individually in little smaller pockets.
Right. And finding that niche sometimes can be the catalyst as to just set somebody off on a path that, the stars are the limit. I won't even say the sky's are the limit, because you're going to go past it. You're going to go to the stars. And if you can, again, that niche might just be what you're looking for. But then again, you still have all the other services that have to be involved.
Yeah.
I love that story about that young man, because that is a lot of times and everybody does this, we get in a routine. We only hear what we hear. We only see what we see. We see the same things to work every day. You don't notice something different unless you're really paying attention. Maybe somebody's got a new mailbox. Never even just drive right on by. Don't even pay attention unless it stands out. I mean, if it's got fireworks coming out of it, it's going to get your attention. But a lot of things are done subtly. We don't see them happen. And then they just accept it as the norm. A lot of times we lose sight of that. Those little itty-bitty changes, if we take stock in those changes, we can really realize that all those itty-bitty little changes, you add them all up, they really make a big change. And you can make that big change, but you have got to get involved a little bit. You've got to put forth that effort, at least get the idea out. Hey, don't be afraid to spew an idea out here or there, because what you're thinking, maybe you don't think anybody else is thinking that. How many times have you been in a group and somebody says, "Did anybody ever try this?" And you were thinking exactly the same thing, and you said, "I was thinking that same thing." And then maybe 5 or 6 other people saying, "Yeah, I was thinking about something just like that too." It's amazing how many people say it, but nobody. I mean, they're thinking it, but then nobody will say it.
Right.
And that idea, which is maybe a fantastic idea, it's all right there, right at the surface, and then it just fizzles out because nobody will bring it up. And that's really part of a lot of what you're trying to do here with these community leaders. Not only get them together to discuss, but throw those ideas out there. What harm is there in throwing an idea out? If it doesn't work, okay.
That's right.
It doesn't work.
Maybe hearing from some that we don't hear from very often, and giving everyone an opportunity to hear from everyone, and to hear those ideas, no matter how big or small. And I think too, it's also I've already heard, oh, this town's done this way, or the naysayers, you're not from here, and
Oh
I know
yeah,
that, and but I think that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you live or what you do or where it's at. You're going to have naysayers. You're going to have those that it seems too hard, but work is hard, and change is hard,
it is.
and I understand that. I'm one that everyone has something that they find in change that is difficult. For anyone to say, "Oh, I'm not afraid of change," well, that's not true. Everyone has something in change that they find difficult. It's just a matter of what that is. But change is hard, and I don't think anyone here is saying we're going to change Salem completely or anything like that. This is no radical changes. This is just small little changes or ways that we can improve. To hear what we keep hearing from the community of what the needs are to help make it healthier, safer. To see the community grow, and just sometimes just those. Some are going to be bigger changes. Some of them are going to be little small changes, just like what you mentioned. But I just want to stress too that it's not. This is truly about. You can choose to participate. You can choose not to use the resources.
Sure.
It's just like anything else. So, but really, this is about finding ways to make sure that, and to make sure that people realize that there are resources available to them, and then where are those spots that maybe we don't have those resources available. So
You got a job in front of you.
I do.
And it should be. It's first off, it's going to be a challenge, and I think you accept challenges dead head on, and I think that you're perfect.
I do.
You're a perfect person for this. But the next meeting's going to be coming up, like it was either in March or April.
Yes,
one
that's
of
correct.
the days that's going to come up. That you're going to get all this data and put all this data in front of people, and they're going to have a chance to actually see some results of what was compiled, and then from that, a lot of times you get ideas from that data. It may not just be as obvious as saying, well, that person says we need to improve the roads. Well, yeah, okay, that becomes an obvious one. Well, we always need to improve the roads. Take that to MoDOT and say we need to improve the roads. Okay, well, here's our budget. You're not going to see any improvement for years and years and years and years. Or if you do, it's going to be on this. That's it. That's all we can afford. Okay, there are budgets. There is money concerns, but as you're mentioning, Tiffin, there is other grants out there that when you see something that can work maybe in Salem, maybe it comes out of all this data which is coming from this Delta Regional grant, maybe you can use that as leverage to get another grant that can actually implement that idea, or at least try to implement that idea to see if it is successful, and then that can change everything very quickly. Or it may take 3 or 4 or 5 years. There is no guarantee when something's going to roll into play, when it's going to become effective. But a lot of times, and when we look at a problem, computers didn't happen overnight. You would think that they did. They just kind of crept up and all of a sudden, bang, it was right there. Computers started back in the 50s. But it really wasn't until personal computer came out in 1980 that anybody even thought about doing that. It was all handheld calculators, and you use math on a piece of paper, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm just saying. I mean, I lived through this stuff, and then when I remember my high school. The very first computer thing we ever do was on a phone modem to one computer out in Clayton, Missouri. Everybody was using this one computer. Every school. I thought, this is the nuttiest thing I ever saw in my life. Through a phone line. It was just through the little data that's coming through the line. It was the coolest thing I ever saw, but it took forever. I could do the problem faster in my hand on paper than I could on a computer. Now, I'm not spinning cylinders either, but, the same idea. That kind of little thing kept growing and growing. Look what we have today. You've got phones that are not phones. They're computers. And you walk and you live your life off, a lot of people do live their life off these phones. And that can be very dangerous. And we need to take stock in that there is a lot of personal service that still needs to be recognized as being very important. And I think people sometimes lose track of that. They're so engrossed in maybe in their phone or maybe in their family or maybe in their sports or whatever it might be, that the people around us suffer. And I think one of the things that when I hear you talking, sounds like the people are the key ingredient here.
Oh, absolutely.
And that, to me, is the biggest part of this grant. If it can do that, that to me is the key to make it all happen. Once you get the people on board, I think you can really make a difference.
Absolutely. It really is about the people. It's about the community, and that's why it's called Community Champion. It is truly about the community. It's not, and it is a little bit of a mindset change because even though it's through the hospital, I even at times have to remind people like, no, 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 no. This is not the hospital. This is a separate part. This is truly what the community feels the needs are. And sometimes we have to take a step back and say, okay, but, and then it's how can the hospital help? How can we be engaged in this? What resources do we have that we can contribute just as any other community partner?
Right.
And so, and I think that's a little bit different approach than what's been done maybe in the past. But I think that that's the whole thing is looking at this from a community perspective. It's about the people. It's about, what are the needs within the community, and really it's the people. It's from the kids to our elderly. It's everything in between. It's a couple of the things that came up from the survey. The top two things that were mentioned from more of a health needs was mental health services and substance abuse services. And I don't think that's going to be a shock to anyone listening. And so, it's like, okay, that is a really big need within our community. And we've seen that several years. And if you look back to past health needs assessments, that's been there too. So, but it's still there. So what are we not getting right? Or what are we missing in this? What do we need to go with this? How do we need to partner with all those other organizations within the community? And, I often see on some of the Facebook posts, are there AA groups here? Are there substance abuse groups here? There's a need. And so, but how do we get people to work together, whether even if it's keeping your group, which is fantastic because everybody needs a certain group, or is it, but how do we make sure, hey, if this group doesn't work for you, here's another group that's available in our community, to support each other. And I think sometimes looking outward in is, I think sometimes that is, and that's not just us. I mean, working with the Delta group, they say that's the number one thing in all of these small communities is the biggest struggle for the community champion is that they have these little pockets. And most of them have always been working very siloed or very in their little singular groups, and getting them to finally want to work together. And that is what is usually the biggest challenge for this role. And regardless of you're in Louisiana, Mississippi, or Missouri, it doesn't make any difference. So, so I think that's, trying to learn to support each other, and not seeing each other maybe as competitors or that's, whatever it may be, but just to see is like, hey, we may not be the right fit for you, but maybe this organization over here might be a better fit because overall it's about the care of that person and the needs that they have and making sure that they continue with the care that they need.
Sounds like community champion. You're a little bit of a psychotherapist, but that's a little bit because you really have to be because when you're dealing with a number of different people and groups, you're dealing. Well, you deal with pride and ego. Obviously, you're going to get that. That's going to happen all the time, and that I'm not going to give up what I have. But you're not giving it up. You're sharing it, and that's the hardest thing to convince somebody is. You're not losing what you have. You're gaining more. It's just you're actually going to do a bigger job. You're going to have a better a group of people to deal with. It's just hard to convince people of that because they think I'm very comfortable with my 5 or 6 or 7 people.
Yeah.
But you can do a lot more with 20.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think that's, it goes back to the core of why you do what you do. If what you're passionate about is a food bank or to provide resources for a substance abuse or whatever that may be, if that truly is your core, then wouldn't you want to work with whoever else, whether you believe that their methodology, however their approach is, that still you have the same core values of what you are trying to provide to the person or the community. So wouldn't you want to work together within some degree to make sure that person is cared for? And I think that's breaking down those barriers and saying, okay, how do we work together, and here's how I'm going to help you and help each other, to make sure, because at the end of the day, our sole purpose is that we still care for this group of people who need a certain care or certain service, and what are our strengths that we could kind of leverage off of each other, and then at the same time, respect each other's boundaries of
Sure.
where they're at, but at the same time, I will make sure that this person is cared for, and that really should be the overall goal and focus.
When you partner up with people, usually you learn something from somebody else. I don't know everything. You don't know everything.
Absolutely.
And when you partner up with somebody and they bring in something new to your group or to your table, and then all of a sudden it just opens up another whole new horizon that you might not have been able to do. Maybe in your control, and I'll say control group. I hate to use that term. It's almost like transparency. I hate that term. Nothing's transparent. But true. Translucent maybe, but not transparent. But you get the idea. I know what I'm doing, and if you partner with somebody else and they know what they're doing, now you have two entities that are going in the same direction that complement each other. If you get a community together that complements each other with the partnerships that they create, think how far you can go. Just think of that.
Absolutely.
Because now you're addressing a different need, maybe hunger, maybe social problems, maybe here, like you mentioned, AA groups and things like that. If you all get all that together, and no matter where somebody needs to turn to, no matter what it might be, health-wise, maybe mental-wise. Yeah. Mental health can be a number of different things. You can you can be depressed.
Yeah.
You can be depressed because the sun's out. I don't know why, but you could be. Some people do. Some people get depressed when it's cloudy. When it gets super cold, how many people do you know get depressed? Because it's gray, it's cold. What do I do? I'm trapped inside. I can't do anything. I can't escape. Okay? If you sit there and dwell on that, you can actually make yourself very sick. But if you sit there and say, well, while I'm here, I can't do anything else, how about if I call this person and let's see if we can put our minds together and come up with something different. So if you don't have that partner to go to, sometimes you feel trapped. And I think, and now I'm going to extrapolate that out. Let's do that with our community. If we have that partner and we can say, hey, this is an obstacle, but it's not the end. We can get past that. You need sometimes that support, like you're talking about support groups, but you also need that confidence that we can get past that and we can move in a forward direction. That's why I say your job's easy.
Yeah.
But getting everybody to buy into it's going to take some time. We all know that. And we've heard, like you said, the naysayers are out there. Yeah, make them finally turn around and say, look, give it a try. What harm does it do to try? If you're never even going to try, you're never going to know if it'll work.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah. To me, one of the successes would be kind of, I'm thinking long term, would just be for for people who are either going to start a group or have been within a group, is that if just one of their thoughts would be, oh, we should reach out to whatever this is in the long term, the community champion, or if a coalition or a network or something is created long term to help keep this going, we should reach out to the community champion and connect with them before we get started or as we get started to see how we fit into the big picture of the kind of the care strategy. That to me would be success.
Sure.
Because that would mean that we have created something that people are aware of, they want to be a part of, and they know that there is an advantage to be part of this larger community plan. And so that to me would be kind of the ultimate success.
That would be good.
Along with obviously the ultimate goal, which is the community health,
Sure.
so forth. But from the community perspective of the long-term growth of helping people get involved, is that they would want to be part of this ultimate plan, this overall plan.
Right. And if you can be the catalyst to expand that out, if somebody has that group and it comes through you, the community champion, and goes, or whoever is community champion, however long it might ever last, then you can guide them to another area to expand those services. You're doing exactly what this whole grant is about.
Yes.
If somebody has an idea or something, can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, Yeah, they sure can. They can contact me at the hospital.
Okay.
They can help get my email. They can. It's Felkerson at smdh.net.
Okay.
That's probably the easiest because I'm often out and about. Or
Yeah, you're not in the office.
no, I am
much.
not in the office. So probably the best is to email me if you
Okay.
can, or they can call the administration's office and they can also make sure that I get any messages. But
It
probably
may be a
email.
while before you get back, because
Yeah.
you are very
Email,
busy, and
email
sometimes
is probably the easiest to get a
Yeah.
hold of me, just because I do always check my email. Obviously, I'm because I'm also working on other grants and things like that. So
and your mom.
and I'm
you
a mom.
know,
Yep.
yeah.
I
So
have
there's
I have a
those.
9-year-old and almost 13-year-old.
So you got those youngins that take a little bit of your
They take a little bit
time.
of my time. Yes, yes. So yeah, it's a balance for sure. So
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate all the work
thank
that
you
you've
for having
done, and
me,
we
Stan.
know you're
Appreciate
going to
it.
have a lot on your plate forward, and anything we can do to help you, we'll be glad to do.
well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Tiffin Felkerson, our community champion for the Delta Regional Authority grant at SMH. I still have
You got it.
I still have a hard time with that. Anyway, well, we really thank her for coming in. We have civic happenings coming up in just a moment. Keep it